Welcome to the Health Revolution, the program that shows you how to have a life of vibrant well-being. In a world full of noisy health trends, we bring you clarity. We reveal the science-backed strategies that truly work in a sea of fads. We explore the physical strength, emotional resilience, and mental mastery. These are the keys to an enriched life. Join us for inspiring interviews with champions who've conquered life's health challenges. Are you ready to unlock your potential to live with vitality and purpose? Then join the Health Revolution. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison, health and fitness expert, speaker, and a mom who understands. Let's embark on this transformative quest. Together, we're about to change the game starting now. The information provided in this show is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Viewers should use their own discretion and consult with a healthcare professional for personalized guidance and recommendations. Welcome, everybody. You are watching the Health Revolution, and we're excited that you're joining us today. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison, and no matter which way you're tuning into us, please do not forget to hit the subscribe button because we want to stay connected to you. Also, at the corner, at the bottom of your screen, there is a show episode tab. Make sure that you remember that. That's your reference point for a lot of the takeaways that we have of today's episode. And let's get into it. Of course, we are all things the physical strength of the body, the emotional resilience, and the mental mastery. But the three together cannot be in synergy without being able to be on the right path and aim for what we describe as optimal living. What would it be like to navigate the road to happiness? What does it mean to be on that highway of happiness? And we're going to find out today. And I'm excited about our guests, plural, today, because we're going to have an incredible conversation. First, take a look at this. Meet Richard Amoedo and Jay Juster, co-authors of the second edition of the book, Who's in Charge of My Mind? Richard, a spiritual advisor for over 35 years, shares his journey from material success to personal fulfillment through his path of transformation, which he calls the Highway of Happiness. Co-author Jay Juster, having applied Richard's teachings, dramatically shortened his own journey from 15 years to just a few. Together, they now help others find lasting peace and joy. Today, we'll explore their insights into mastering the mind. Richard Amoedo and Jay Juster, welcome to the show. How are you, gentlemen?
Very well, thank
Hi,
you. Yourself?
doing well.
I'm excited to talk to you both. And you know, whenever there's a book that shines a light on how to really overcome obstacles, this is something that we truly need to talk about. And, you know, I'm curious about your backstory, Richard. If you can share a little bit about your journey, how you got to the space where you became that spiritual guide, and what were some things to help you become and step into that role?
Well, there are some people that get to heaven going through heaven. I got to heaven by going through hell. And at the age of 37, I had achieved everything that I believe I needed to achieve to be happy. And I had more things that I could even enjoy. And I became overwhelmed over a certain circumstance that I needed to get some emotional help, because up to that time I was able to manage my emotions very well. But at that moment I hit bottom emotionally, and I reached out for help. And it was the first time in my life that I ever reached out for help. And just to give you an idea how important it is for me to say that I could reach out for help, is when I was 17 and I had chased my mother to the United States. I went without eating for 6-7 days, and I had my uncles and friends on the same block, and I wouldn't ask for help. Well, I had chased the difficulty. There was a person that I had become involved because one of the things that I had too many of, besides my wife, was two girlfriends. And one of the girlfriends was not doing it right. She was an alcoholic. So she was sent to a treatment facility, and they asked me to tell them how to help her. And in my immense wisdom, I took a flight over to Minnesota to tell them how to do it. But thank God on the way there, I was looking out the window, and I always know when God is talking to me because I hear something that is way too smart to be me. And what came to me was this: Richard, the problem is not with her. The problem is with you. You need help.
And that's big, to take ownership of your actions and say, okay, I'm just it in front of me. I see before me that how I add to the table. And so you became a spiritual advisor after doing healing and doing your work. And I know you've been in the space for a number of years. And I want to bring Jay into the conversation. How did you get to know Richard? What were those humble beginnings where you got connected with this gentleman?
Sure. Richard and I ran in similar circles. And at the time, he was simply another person that I was coming into contact with. And from time to time, Richard would approach me and start a conversation. And at times, I would be struck by the directness of his communications. And I'll give you a perfect example. One day, Richard comes up to me and we started talking, and he asked me, "Jay, are you happy?" And I said, "Yeah, Richard, I'm doing great." In my life, on paper, it seemed like I was doing very well. And he said, "Jay, if you're happy, I'd like you to tell your face." And he actually suggested at that time I go over to the mirror and I take a look to see what my face was displaying and whether it was happiness or something else.
But the only thing that I have seen in common between men and women, we're all just as insane. And it's just the only difference is the equipment. But other than that, we're the same. Uh, Men may go for Porsches and women may go for something else. But regardless, is nobody's satisfied with self. And it's very difficult to be satisfied by anyone else when I wasn't satisfied by self. Because like I said, when I came into the realization that I just communicated, I had 5 stores, 3 houses, a wife, a son, the 2 girlfriends. I went on vacations every other week now with my wife. So I was pretty crazy. I was trying to feel something within me, and there was nothing that I could fulfill it. And if you like to later, I'll tell you about the 2 stickers that I was going to take to the grave with me.
And you talk about what life was for you back then, and you obviously we're gonna talk in detail about the book, and you talk about not having that happiness. Can both of you define your definition of happiness and what it means, and why is it so elusive to all of us?
Let me see. In chapter 7, we added a glossary of the book, and it has a definition for essential terms. And one of the words we put in here was happiness. And the definition we have is a heavenly state. And the good news about that is the very next word alphabetically is heaven. And the definition for heaven is happiness.
Now, do you find that that's a hard concept for many people to embrace? Do you think we get lost in the feels in the moment where we are, and that it's hard for many people to embrace happiness or to describe it in that manner?
I'd like to say a couple of things just to catch up a bit. So at the beginning, you were talking about the highway to happiness. And actually, that was originally what we were thinking about going with. And then when we looked at it together, we changed it to the highway of happiness. Because the big problem I had personally is I always thought happiness was a destination as a result of earning $1 million, of getting the perfect relationship, or getting out of the bad relationship I'm in, or getting the perfect job. It was always a point in the future after X, Y, and Z. It was never going to be today. And it became the highway of happiness because we have found that it is available to anybody, regardless of their circumstances. That's been our experience. The other thing is, you were mentioning about the difference between men and women and their ability to share their emotions. I was looking into the statistics that have come out on mental illness. It's actually very surprising to find out that women, at a rate of 3 women to 2 men, experience mental illness nowadays, according to the CDC. As a result of whether we share or we don't share our feelings, at times it can seem like the only thing that we're doing when we're sharing our negativity, our complaints, our stresses is reinforcing that negativity and speaking it out loud to somebody else so it becomes true for us. Can actually be detrimental in some ways.
So, and that's a striking revelation that the CDC has come up with that. Do you think that, or in what you have seen and observed since COVID, so say the last 4 years, what have you noticed has been the biggest struggle for all of us, both men and women, to conquer these obstacles and overcome happiness? There's so many people who feel like it's just so elusive, and a lot of it is, to your point, the perception of what happiness is. But what have you noticed in these last 4 years that's striking that maybe we don't realize is going on?
Well, it is not so much now as it was when we were in when we could go to restaurants and different things. And the reason that there was such a big problem then, there was nowhere to escape to. The bars were closed, the movie houses were closed, and the biggest thing that we all have is we want to escape our problems. And a lot of people utilize those places to escape, and when they couldn't, they had to face and look at themselves. And I, for one, did not know how to look at myself.
What made you decide, you know what, I need to look at myself, and I'm going to, and I'm going to take that hard look, and I'm just going to face the music. I'm not gonna shy away from doing so. What was the turning point for you?
A tractor trailer. Sure. When I went to Hazelden and I spoke with the counselor, and I told him I needed help. I was there to help her, but I realized I needed help, and would he help me? And he said, "Well, it's after hours. If the office was closed, why don't you go check in into this motel and call me tomorrow morning?" And when I went to that motel afterwards, I went to get something to eat. My emotions had become totally destructive. I was up and down like a yo-yo, like I'd never been before. And there was a tractor trailer gas tractor trailer coming down the hill, and I seriously contemplated jumping in front of it. And and you see, I never wanted to kill myself before because I figured with my luck it will probably be worse. So that's about the only reason why I didn't commit suicide in my younger days. But by the way, two of the secrets that I wasn't going to tell anyone is that I was raped when I was 5 and 8 years old. Well, the first thing that I needed to do was to expose it. And the first time that I exposed it was when I was 37 years old. And after that, I needed to expose it until it became irrelevant. And after all of that, and I thought I had it licked, I realized that every time that I said, "Oh, I'm clear now," there was a little something inside of me that was telling me, no, not yet. And I had a friend, and she was into NLP. You know what that is? Neuro linguistic programming. And she asked me if I wanted to do something with that. And I said, sure. And as the result of that session with NLP, I was able to clear out the last part that was still not clear. You want to cover that, Jay?
Here is a good example of a broader concept. There is a healthy middle ground when it comes to things like pride and fear. On one hand, it can get out of balance if I become excessively fearful, and that's when the fear will stop me. And on the other hand, I can get out of balance if I have a recklessness and I'm like the mouse at the top of the hill sticking out its chest against the eagle. The eagle doesn't care how confident the mouse is, it's going to be lunch. So there is a balance where I can have some degree of fear. And when Richard was helping me to see some of the common denominator misbehaviors that were affecting my relationships, how I was at work, different areas of my life, sure, it wasn't the greatest Saturday I ever had. The flip side of that is Richard has helped me become an extraordinarily weird kind of person, because it used to be that I was so critical of me inside of my head that I could not stand another person adding on to the criticism. And now it's gotten to the point where we've developed a trust, and I've seen the benefits as a result of following through on his guidance, that when he points something out to me, I go, this is great. Now I have uncovered another problem where I no longer have to deal with the consequences of that problem. Instead, I get to enjoy the benefits of the solution. And that's wonderful. I get excited.
Is it safe to say that you had your aha moments, life-changing aha moments when your path crossed with Richard's?
Ooh, it did not start off that way.
Okay.
Richard and I had an interesting trajectory from the time that we met and we started to talk. I was already talking to somebody else who was my trusted advisor. And Richard started to talk to me. We developed a rapport. And then I made the switch to Richard. After that, even then, within the first week, Richard was saying, you've developed a lot of bad habits in terms of how you follow, or in my case, don't follow. And so he let me go. And that became quite a shocking moment for me. Nobody had ever said, Jay, you're really not up to the par. And I'd like to demonstrate my love for you by letting you go your own way if that's what you'd like to do, because it's clear you don't want to go my way. And how's your way been working out for you, by the way? And so when we started talking again, it actually took me about 7 months and getting to an emotional bottom where I thought the only thing worse than the way it used to be for me, where I thought there was no solution, I just could not find happiness, I didn't know what to do, was the way it seemed to be now, where I'd met up with a spiritual advisor, a trusted friend who could show me the highway of happiness, as we call it. But somehow I could not make the turn. I could not merge onto this highway. And I was going to quit. And I was going to quit. And I called up a friend who I'd been sharing some of the revelations I had with Richard. And he said, well, Jay, is Richard charging you anything? And I said, no. And he said, okay, well, haven't you developed a lot in the past 7 months? And I was like, oh, yeah, this has been the greatest 7 months of my life. And my friend, God bless him, he said, Jay, it seems to me like as long as Richard will keep talking to you, just keep talking to him. And so I called Richard back, and instead of quitting, which I really wanted to do because I just felt like I could not jump as high as he wanted to, I said, all right, what are we going to do next? And that became the turning point for me after 7 months, if you can imagine that, of me calling him and just feeling like I was not doing what he needed me to do.
That's pretty incredible. We've got a lot that we're going to cover, including the book. First, we're going to take a commercial break. Stay right there. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this.
So NAD is something that we use for people who are going through withdrawal symptoms, whether it's opioids, whether it's alcohol. GABA receptors in our brain is something that alcohol affects when we drink. So when you're going through alcohol withdrawals and I give you the calm bag or give you calm with GABA in it, it kind of gives your brain that kind of fix, so to speak, of the alcohol to help with the withdrawal symptoms. I'm not saying it gets rid of them. I'm not saying I give you GABA and you're good to go forever. That's not what I'm saying. It's, again, just like everything we offer, it's a relief.
Introducing Launchpad, the perfect partner to help you launch your dream project to the world. We know that time is of the essence, and we're here to help you make the most of it. With Launchpad, you'll get access to the most advanced digital tools and strategies to take your idea from a mere concept to a fully fledged success. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or a seasoned pro, we have everything you need to make your mark in the world. Launchpad, your ultimate launch partner.
Welcome back to the Health Revolution. Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison. We're talking today, navigating the road of happiness with our guests today, Richard Amoedo and Jay Juster. They're co-authors of the book, Who's in Charge of My Mind, second edition. I have a copy here of Who's in Charge of My Mind, that this edition is available in Amazon stores. And I wanted to talk, gentlemen, with what was the backstory behind this book? What led you to write it, the title, and then from here, what is the story behind the theme, Who's in Charge of My Mind?
You. And by you, I mean anybody, any you. Because one of the things that I was able to determine very early in my development, that the main reason that I have suffered so much for so many years was only due to my ignorance. And I didn't want anybody else to suffer for as long as I did for their ignorance. And just to give you a small idea of what I'm talking about, there was somebody that I used to listen to, that the first time that I heard him say this, I thought he was crazy and bananas. And what he said was, the best that one can be is to be good for nothing. And I heard that, and inside of my head, I went, are you crazy? The best that one can be is to be good for nothing. And he went on to explain, yes, even wanting to be good to go to heaven is doing it for something. So the best that one can be is to be good for nothing, is to be good for no reason at all. And then there was another book that I studied a great deal, and where it talks about altruism. And the actual definition of the word altruistic is for the well-being of others. And that's basically my deal. Well, early in my development, I realized that I was not in charge of my mind, and the way that came about, I was listening to Ram Dass, which is another spiritual advice, spiritual person that developed his philosophies from the East, and he was saying that in Eastern philosophy, the thinking mind is a wonderful servant, and also a horrible master. And I realized for the first time that my mind was supposed to have been working for me. And whenever I was doing all of those things with the girlfriends and this and that, and opening up 5 stores in 5 years, is because there was so much noise inside of my head that was driving me that I couldn't keep up with anything. So the title is to begin to show people that, to this day, by the way, I'm not in charge of my mind, but I do manage it so very well. My worst moments last a minute, and some of those worst moments that last a minute, today they last seconds. And that's one of the greatest benefits, because you see, I used to have to chase my butt all the time. And what that means is that I was a human doer rather than a human being. And everything, all of the things drove my life instead of me enjoying my life with those things. Yeah.
I think it's pretty powerful that you said that the mind is a wonderful servant but a horrible master. I've never heard it prior to our conversations, how that can apply to life, and where that pretty much integrates with times that we have struggled. And Jay, where do you come in with when you first came across this book? Now, in timeline of getting to know Richard and him being a mentor, and him guiding you, were you already had the book already came out when you first came across Richard?
No, actually, part of our early partnership, I helped Richard put the book together. And as a result of being exposed to several of the ideas in this book, I think it drastically accelerated my ability to develop in a way that wouldn't have been before. And I was in the first edition of the book. If somebody were to look closely, Richard talks about somebody who, when he first met them, their emotional development was that of an early teenager. And in a year, I was able to develop about 10 years and became closer to my age, not quite my age, but I was getting there. And the thing about this book that I want to emphasize is it can be deceptive in the information age to think that this is something like a reading book. And especially because it outlines so many examples of Richard's life, of my life, and different stories, it could seem more like a novel, something to read and to enjoy. The point of Richard putting a lot of his experiences, and in the second edition, I also have a lot of my experiences in the book, is to demonstrate how certain spiritual principles or emotional or mental health principles applied in our lives, and for the reader to then take their life and hopefully apply themselves to that same principle and see how they might benefit from it. And that's what makes this book, in my perception, so special, because I was the kind of person where I had read maybe 1,000 books one time. And it did me a lot of good, because somebody would ask me, had you read this book? And I'd go, oh yeah. And I could recite certain things from it. The only problem is I could not practice what was outlined in the book. And when it comes to something like this, it taught me how to study. It taught me how to actually read and learn something. The point of the glossary, by the way, Richard, funnily enough, despite English being his second language, I now have learned to joke and say that English is also my second language, because whatever I was speaking before I met Richard, I thought I knew what it was, but it wasn't English.
Well, I love that analogy, and because that's pretty powerful. And Richard, can you tell our viewing audience where the accent comes from?
Well, I'm actually a Southern Yankee hick.
A Southern Yankee hick. Say
Yeah,
more
first,
about that. What does that
well,
mean?
first of all, I'm a true Southerner. You can't go any more south without starting in the north, because I was born in Argentina. Then I lived in New York for 9 years. That's how I became a Yankee. And then when I went to Dallas, I needed to learn to speak English all over, because I went from Yankee to hick. And that was a very good transition. So that's where, so I'm a Southern Yankee hick. Most people cannot tell whether I'm European or what. When I ask them, where do you think I'm from? They don't usually have a clue.
Well, I'm sure they're curious about it though, and that's why I wanted to ask. Now, I wanted to pick through the book a little bit for our viewers. Who's in charge of my mind? I know that there's one area that I'd like to draw attention to, and it is a little into the book where you talk about anger and rage. And there was a situation, if I may point out, you talked about how your marriage was coming to an end, and you were having to discuss with your then wife the decisions that were being made, how things were going to be split. And, one of the things that you mentioned, I'm going to skip a little bit, but then I want to come back to the situation. You said, I came to understand, this is on page 49, that when I get mad at something, I'm not truly mad at that particular thing. What I'm upset about is my own internal preconception and how that relates to the thing in question. My anger, therefore, has nothing to do with the reality of the situation. I thought that was pretty powerful. I just wanted you to embellish a little bit more. If you can add the backstory of what was the type of discussion you were happening with your then wife. But then it's pretty powerful because we struggle with anger. These days, people are a little testy these days. And say more about that.
Well, I'll tell a little about the story first of all. You see, about 3 or 4 months earlier, she had contradicted me. It was never a good thing for a woman to contradict me. I was such an idiot. I was animalistic. And we had this big warehouse, and she had an office, and I had an office. And when she contradicted me, I rearranged her office, and I stopped short of putting the desk on top of her. I was that kind of an animal. And the next time that you're speaking of, she contradicted me again, and I was starting with the desk this time, and I grabbed the edges of the desk, and at that moment I said, wait a minute, Katie, I can't do this anymore. You leave or I leave. What's it going to be? She said, well, I don't want to live. Okay. It was a Wednesday. I said, next Thursday, I'll be back and tell me how we're going to do this deal. And I came back the following Thursday, and she says, I don't know what to do. I said, I tell you what, you take the 2 houses, because the 3rd house I had already signed it over to my mother and sister. You take the Porsche, you take the 5 stores, and I'll take $5,000. She could decide that. And that's by the way, that anger cost me about $2 million, and I consider it to be the cheapest price that I have paid to get rid of my anger.
Why do we struggle with anger so much from what you've seen? Why is it such a huge bear to grapple with?
Well, it's because it's the backside of another coin. You want to tell them about the other side of the coin of anger, Jay?
One of my greatest handicaps was self-pity. And I remember the day that Richard communicated to me that self-pity is nothing more than anger in reverse. And it helped me to see that the separation I had been creating between myself and the other people who wore their emotions on their sleeve and would communicate their anger. I had a wide variety of spiritual background before I met Richard. And I was very good at projecting a facade of equanimity and calm, so nobody would see my anger. And it was just like the soda bottle with the cap tightly screwed on there. As soon as you were going to unscrew it, all the carbonation would explode. And that was like me. I was a spring just waiting to be unlocked at all times.
And, you talk, and I've never heard it phrased in that way, that self-pity is anger in reverse. Was it sounds to me like you chose to have a willingness to grow, that there was a decision to grow beyond your perception of where you saw yourself and your capabilities, your emotional capabilities and the level of maturity that you began to obtain. At what point or what helped you to decide, you know what, I'm gonna give myself permission to grow. Here's my slice of humble pie. I'm going to embrace humility and all that implies. What was the turning point for you? That's another area that we're oftentimes stuck with.
Well, when I was about 7 months into development is when this deal with my wife occurred. And I would like to tell you that it was because I wanted to develop and so much, but I don't want to start lying to you, because the only thing that occurred at that moment, just like I was deeply out of reality before my development, early into my development, I was just as much out of reality because I was giving away something that it was to take me years before I could get in that neighborhood. And also was not the right thing to do, because when I gave everything to her, she was not a person that could handle that business, and within a year, she blew it. Well, for me, it was very easy because, like I said, I began to see that I needed to look for the similarities and not the difference. So like, for instance, the way that I used to escape the most was through sex. Well, that's no different than if I was an alcoholic or a drug addict or overeater or whatever. Obsession is an obsession. And do you know the actual definition of the word obsession? What do you got?
Let's see. The glossary says it is a reality that lies beneath the conscious level.
You see, if a drunk could see himself, he won't have to get drunk 1,000 times. If I could see myself, I didn't need to do the things that I did thousands of times also. So what you can say that what brought me to reality was the misery of not knowing how to become happy, and life slapped me on the face, in which I had then no choice to either kill me or say help. I chose help.
Say the misery of not knowing how to become happy. We're going to dive into this even more. First, we're going to take a commercial break. Be right back. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this. Hi, I'm Adriana, and welcome back to Fit Bites. Today, let's talk about why strength training is so important for us women over the age of 40. Now, as we age, our bodies naturally lose muscle mass, which can lead to weakness, decreased metabolism, and even increased risk of injury. But the good news is, strength training can help combat all of that. Now, building muscle through strength exercises like weightlifting, resistance bands, or body weight moves not only improves your muscle mass, but it also boosts your metabolism, helping you maintain a healthy weight. Plus, it strengthens your bones, which is super critical in preventing osteoporosis and fractures. Now, strength training also improves balance and coordination, reducing the risk of falls as we age. And don't worry about bulking up, which is a myth. Women tend to build lean, toned muscle, not mass. Now start small, be consistent, and focus on full body exercises. Strength training isn't just for looking good, it's essential for long-term health and vitality. Stay strong, stay active, And stay tuned for more Fit Bites with Adriana. Welcome back to the Health Revolution. We're back and we're spending quality time with our guests today, Richard Amoedo and Jay Juster. They're the co-authors of the book, Who's in Charge of My Mind, second edition. And before the break, we have been talking about the components of how powerful this book is to really unlock understanding ourselves and getting transparent. That's been my takeaway so far. And I want to talk about the second edition, because obviously this had so many nuggets that there was more to be said. Tell us a little bit about the second edition and what was the reasoning behind it and the goals for the readers of this book.
So the second edition came out about 4 or 5 years after the first edition. And during that time, there had been quite a number of conversations that Richard and I had had with a variety of people all over the world, because we started doing daily Zoom meetings with the people who we were talking to. And this allowed us to not only broaden our reach, but have much more consistent reach with the same people who we wanted to get in touch with. And this is men, women, different backgrounds, different anything. They're all different. And one of the things that we discovered is there's so many questions that are answered in a very simple, direct way. Regardless of the surface level difference, there is an underlying problem that a lot of us have. And it's not resolved by information. We were talking earlier about being in the information age, and yet it seems like we're having more problems than ever. There are people who are in poverty, people who are obese, people who have extreme mental illness. Another statistic from the National Institute of Mental Health is that over 1 in 5 adults actually experience some form of mental illness right now. And this is particularly scary for some of your listeners, because I know a lot of them are women. And like we were mentioning earlier, 3 women for 2 men are experiencing this type of mental illness. So somehow just having more information, just being exposed to more data is not solving the problem. And this brings to question, what can we do differently? How can we use this book and this platform in a different way to create an underlying result? And what Richard helped me to do was not just look at, for example, fitness on a physical level, what are the movements I can do in the gym, and not just look at fitness in the mental level in terms of the discipline and getting myself out of the bed and into the gym, but being able to look at fitness from a holistic perspective, from the whole person. And how does my relationship with myself impact my desire to be a healthy person? Am I worthy of health, vibrancy, and abundance? Or am I believing and therefore operating under the assumption that I'm worth something less than that? And if that's the case, where I don't think I am worthy of certain things, you were bringing up unconditional love earlier, then it's going to be extraordinarily difficult for those things to manifest in my experience, no matter how much I attempt to push through the resistance I have internally.
Well, what I will communicate in regards to that even though our circle has so many people, that circle is not wide enough to catch enough fish. And what I mean by that, most people are willing to expose themselves to development, but they're not really that willing to go all the way. And the thing that happens when one does not go through the development, they regress to what they were before. So we would like to be in contact with more people. So maybe there'll be more people, out of more people, they can get well. So then those people will reach out those others. I can only expose myself to so many people. Jay can only expose himself to so many people. So the only way that we can hope to do more for others is to do what we're doing here now with you.
And we certainly appreciate you all being here. What is in store for the upcoming future with sharing the information about the book, both first and second edition? How are you planning to have that exponential reach? What are some tactics that you're using to get the word out right now and sharing, using your voice to share this message with others?
The only tactic that we use is truth. I used to be, I told you I had 5 stores, and I was the best salesman because on Saturdays I will go to any location, and that day that I was there, usually that location sold the most or was the second one, even though normally was the lowest one. But I will tell you that the main reason that I was the best salesman is because I did not sell. I found out what the person needed and what was good for their location, and I knew the product and displayed it for them, and they bought from me. I didn't sell them anything. I have had people buy, 3 customers buy from me at the same time. And I want you to know that in the 80s, $1,000 or $1,500, $2,000 set was not peanuts. And that was the kind of merchandise that we sold. We sold top quality merchandise at the lowest possible prices.
Go to a quick commercial break. When does the second edition, when is it available?
Hopefully it'll be next week or the week after that, which would be the beginning of November or the end of October.
All right. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this. Welcome back to the Health Revolution. Welcome back, everybody. Our guests today, Richard Amoedo and Jay Juster, they're co-authors of the book, Who's in Charge of My Mind, second edition. Gentlemen, where can viewers find you in the virtual space?
Our website is notmymind.com. And when they go on that website, they have the ability to get the first 3 chapters for free if they plug in their name and email. We're on social media, the various platforms. You can look at Highway of Happiness, all spelled out, all one word. On LinkedIn, it is Richard Amoedo. And we have TikTok, we have YouTube, we have Instagram. We're all over the place.
So Highway of Happiness. And I love that it's more of, it is the journey and not necessarily a destination. Gentlemen, I know you talked about that the book, the second edition of versus the one newer than the one that I have in my hands, is coming out next week, right around the corner. What do you have going on for the rest of the remainder of the year and then going into 2025?
What is it there?
Second edition. There it is.
You go, Richard.
You've got it.
So we have the audio book coming out as well. We're really excited for that. And we're posting videos on all of our social media platforms on a daily basis. That's really great. And we're trying to find more ways and showing up on more different shows in order to be available to more people who are experiencing something that they would like to find a lasting solution to without any medication.
There's one thing that I wanted to share also, Adriana. Uh, the media felt results when I began to disclose my secrets and began to expose my life. The first thing that occurred, I no longer had any problems with hemorrhoids. The second thing was I didn't have to give myself shots for allergies anymore also. My last headache was in February 17 of 1986. And not only that, something that some people may consider to be important, whether one have had the experience that I had with the 2 rapes or not. Most people have a problem with sexual inadequacy. I also resolved that too. So I think that those things are pretty important things to get rid of.
Well, you gentlemen, thank you for your candidacy, your transparency, and the book is called "Who's in Charge of My Mind," second edition, coming out very soon. Richard Amoedo, Jay Juster, co-authors. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And for all our viewers, of course, you can find us on the internet. Our website is thehealthrevolutiontv.com. There you can subscribe to our newsletter. You can certainly email us as well for any show episode ideas you'd love for us to cover. In the top corner of your screen, you will see our QR code. If that's easier for you to grab the website, feel free to do so. And then, of course, every Tuesday and Thursday, you can find us on E360 TV, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern on the Achieve TV channel. That is all the time that we have for today. Until next time, take care of yourselves. We will see you soon.